So this is not your average iMac G3 because it has a rather unique way of interacting with it. And no, this is not some weird one-off mod that somebody did to their old computer. This was actually something that you could buy back in 1999 if you knew where to look. So while the rest of the tech world is anxiously debating whether or not we'll ever see a touchscreen Mac, I'm here to tell you that there already was one over 20 years ago. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at what is probably the rarest Apple computer that I have in my collection. When I first saw this thing for sale on eBay about a year ago, I was pretty skeptical because the thought of there being a touchscreen iMac G3 seemed completely ludicrous. But my curiosity got the best of me, and after a really late night research rabbit hole, I found myself buying it for maybe a little bit more than I wanted to spend. But you know what? That's okay, because as you've already seen, it's got a frickin' touchscreen. This is a real thing, despite how crazy it sounds. And I'm sure you have a lot of questions. You saw a prototype in the title and you're probably thinking, wait a second, did Apple actually consider putting a touchscreen on retail iMac G3s? Well, no, this is not Apple prototype hardware, as cool as that would be, but it is a prototype from a company called Elo. Now, these guys eventually began selling these touchscreen iMacs through Apple's value-added reseller program. Basically, they would purchase regular iMac G3s from Apple, install their touch sensor, and resell them. Now, if you work in retail or customer service, chances are this name probably rings a bell, because Elo stuff is pretty widespread. They make a wide variety of POS systems, touchscreen monitors, and kiosks, and that's actually what this bizarre iMac was intended for. If you remember back when the G3 iMac came out, it was radically different in terms of design from practically every other computer on the market, because it actually looked appealing. It was colorful, translucent, some might even say futuristic, and it easily stood out in the sea of beige boxes that was the personal computer market at the time. Even more so when Apple began selling these things in multiple colors. So the folks at Elo got together and said, you know, this thing would make a pretty good kiosk because it's something that would actually get your attention if you were walking down a mall or an airport terminal or wherever a business had one of these things set up. And regardless of what a kiosk is designed for, you'll find that these software interfaces on them typically favor large, easy to press buttons and UI elements. And that's why touchscreens make for an ideal way to interact with these things. Because using a keyboard and mouse, especially this mouse, just wouldn't be great if you were using this computer as a kiosk, because the wires could get damaged by people yanking on them, keys on the keyboard could get pried off, not to mention how dirty this stuff would get from hundreds of people using it every single day. It's just something else you'd have to maintain and likely replace if you were in charge of maintaining a fleet of these machines. Of course, the iMac wasn't designed with any of this in mind, so you'd have to figure out a way to install a touch sensor on the display to make this work. And that's exactly what Elo did. They implemented their iTouch touch-on-tube technology, which uses surface acoustic waves to determine where you're touching the screen. And to put it really simply, this is really frickin' cool. Because when I'm touching the screen, I am making direct contact with the CRT. There's no overlay or anything. How does it work, you might ask? Well, it's got two sets of transducers installed on the CRT, one for transmitting acoustic waves and one for receiving them. When you touch the screen, the acoustic waves are disrupted and a change in amplitude occurs. This is detected by the touch sensor, which then uses positioning coordinates to plot where the disruption occurred on an X and Y axis. The computer then receives this information through a controller board installed on the back of the CRT's neckboard assembly, which is then plugged into a USB port on the side of the machine. It's actually really clever, and using this type of touchscreen technology accomplishes a couple of things. As I already mentioned, it eliminates the need for an overlay on top of the screen, meaning that the original image quality of the display is preserved. But it also can tell how hard that you're pressing on the screen, which is denoted by a Z-axis coordinate. Yeah, this is essentially 3D touch years before Apple implemented it on the iPhone 6s. And it gave Elo's iMac an advantage over the ones sold by their competitors. Because, yeah, believe it or not, they weren't the only ones selling touchscreen iMac G3s. You also had the Touch Station from MicroTouch and the TouchStar iMac G3 from Troll Touch. Yeah, not the greatest name there, guys. Yeah, all of these began selling around the same time as well. So you had Microtouch's offering come out in September of 1999 for $2,085, and it was available in all 5 iMac colors that were around by that point. And it used a capacitive touchscreen overlay that would go on top of the CRT. Troll Touch's iMac used a resistive overlay, and it was a little bit cheaper, coming in at $19.95. For reference, a base model iMac G3 from the time cost $11.99. Troll Touch was also the only company out of these 3 that offered a conversion service, where you could send them the iMac G3 you already purchased, and they would install the touch sensor for you for $795. And they even sold an external version for around $600 that was user installable. It didn't really look the greatest, but it worked well, according to the company anyways. Yeah, these things appear to be even more obscure than Elo's iMac, as I couldn't find a lot of information about them. Even after scouring the Internet Archive, Google Books, Google Newspapers, even VintageApple.org's incredible archive of old Mac-related magazines, I was pretty much limited to official press releases and websites. I did come across a couple of Macworld articles, but they just briefly mentioned both of these units as a part of an article about touchscreen iMac kiosks, most of which contained the same info I saw in the press releases. And it's not difficult to see why this is the case. I mean, these products filled a very specific niche. Not to mention they weren't even targeted at the consumer market. But another reason was likely due to both of these products being overshadowed by Elo's touchscreen iMac, because not only did it use technology that didn't require an overlay, but it actually ended up being cheaper than both of the other offerings, starting at $15.99 for a 333MHz Revision D model. And that's what makes this specific unit that I have here so unique, because this is a 266MHz Revision C iMac, which was never sold with Elo's touch technology built in. So the Revision D models probably weren't available at the time Elo was developing their touchscreen technology for the iMac, so they settled on using this one instead for testing. And with the retail model of these things already being extremely hard to find, this unit is probably one of a kind. Now, unfortunately, this unit that I got had a pretty noticeable issue when I first received it, because the CRT had this amber tint to it, which after using some Apple display diagnostic utilities, I discovered that it was caused by the blue channel just not functioning properly at all. So what I ended up doing was taking apart the entire computer, and I just opted to swap out the analog and digital video boards with working ones that I purchased off of a viewer, actually. And you can see it displays everything properly now, which is great. Yeah, that's kind of a little history of this thing and how it works. Let's go ahead and actually take a look at it in action. Now, I've been using this thing for a little while, and one of the first things I noticed is it's actually not incredibly easy to use this touchscreen with just, the macOS desktop here. This is currently running macOS 8.6. It also has 96 megabytes of RAM, which is not factory, by the way. The bottom label on this iMac said that it shipped with 32 megabytes of RAM, so this was upgraded by Elo. But yeah, it's not the easiest thing to use. I mean, you can definitely get around with it, but especially when it comes to things like trying to close windows, I mean, you have to be really precise with your tap to be able to select to hit the close. I mean, you see how precise, there, I just closed it. So, it's not incredibly easy to navigate around in macOS 8.6 here. But, I mean, to be fair to this thing, it wasn't really designed to be used with just the macOS desktop. If you had this thing set up in your business or, for whatever, you would want to have it running a custom piece of software with large buttons and other UI elements that, is designed to be used with a touchscreen. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any custom software like that on this computer, which kind of sucks because I thought it'd be really cool to try and figure out exactly what this machine was used for in its previous life. And I say that because even though this is a prototype, it actually saw use outside of Elo's development lab in California, because when I bought the thing, it came in a case with a business card from a now defunct manufacturing company based in Tennessee. I looked them up, they're not around anymore, but with the business card being on the front of this case, it could indicate this thing was probably owned by them. And the seller that I bought this from was located in Canada, so this thing's definitely been around. All that being said, though, this is not just a standard install of macOS 8.6 because Elo has their own software restore CD that was also included in this, and you can see they've got the Apple value-added reseller logo there on the side. And this is how you would restore, this thing back to Elo's factory settings. So, it's got the touchscreen software and the drivers and everything for it, but it also has some demo applications that we can take a look at. So if we go into the applications folder here, there is a folder. There's actually two folders in here, interestingly enough. One of them is the iTouch folder and one of them is iTouch. Now, between these, the applications in here are the same versions and everything, but like one of these folders has like one additional program that's not in, it's not really a program, I think it's an image. Yeah, here's the image, iTouch.jpg. There's also the uninstaller here, but this Z-axis program is the same as what's in here. Now, the Z-axis program is what I showed footage of before. This is the tool you can use to test that the Z-axis is working properly. So if I press on this button and if I press harder, you see the percentage will increase there. So yeah, it's working totally fine here. So, it's able to detect how hard that I'm pressing on the screen. We'll go ahead and close out of that. We've also got the USB driver here, which is just a system extension. So you're supposed to put this in the extensions folder. It's already there, but you've got a copy of it in here. You've got the iTouch utility here, which is how you can align the touch sensor. You can hit info here to get a status of the controller itself. So you've got the serial number there, and you can also just disable it entirely. You also have this option for enabling a sound whenever you touch the screen, which is definitely annoying when you're on the macOS desktop here, but I can see this being really useful if you're in like a kiosk software and you just want to give the user confirmation that what they tapped is, actually being received by the system. So, you've got that option. You've also got smoothing. You can hide the cursor as well if you want. We're just going to disable the click sound, and you can change the drag delay. You can change the mode as well. Click on touch, and that'll be whenever I make contact with the screen is when it's going to register the click. I could also change this to, and this also happens too. It's relatively annoying where it will just, and you can see the mouse cursor is still moving around, but it kind of locks up, and you'll see in a moment, once it kind of catches up with itself, it'll just register all those inputs at like one time. So I've had that happen as well. As I've been going through here. But yeah, you can see now I can't actually drag stuff around because as soon as I, even though I'm holding down, it's not registering that I'm still, pressing on the screen. So you can just disable dragging entirely. But let's go back, if I can get back to this folder here, and we'll change this to, so you've got click on untouch as well. We're just going to set it back to drag, double click. And yeah, so that's the configuration program. You also have a README document in here, which you can open up. It is a PDF, and it just gives you some info about it. So you got, info about the restore CD here. By the way, I will be archiving this disk, so the link will be down below if anybody, happens to have one of these things and doesn't have the restore software. There was another version of this disk on the Internet Archive already, but it's not the same one. So, well, now there's two. But yeah, it's a little README document. It tells you, how to clean it, how to, again, restore it from factory settings. Just stuff you definitely want to read over if you, had one of these machines and were, using it in a production environment. We also have this really cool game, this clickmatch.move. We open this up, and this is a matching game with all the iMac colors. So check this out. I mean, you gotta match them here. So that's not strawberry. There's strawberry. Grape, where was grape at? Have we gotten to grape yet? There's lime, there's grape. Blueberry, that's not blueberry, that's blueberry. There's tangerine there. And yeah, I mean, it's super cool. It's a nice little thing they included here. What's your favorite flavor? Mine personally is the lime. This is a strawberry iMac. Gotta love it. So yeah, that is that's actually all the pre-installed software, and again, gotta really be precise there with closing it out. But yeah, that's everything in here, and then again, you do have the uninstaller in this folder. And oh, you got this image too. We'll just open this up. It's just a little advertisement. iTouch by Elo. And yeah, there it is. It's not really like interactive or anything. It's just an image. So we'll close out of that. And, oh, well, we didn't close out of that. There we go. Now we did. And we'll get out of all this. Now, I should mention that I did not actually go through the software restore process from this CD. I just left the machine as it was when I got it because, you know, it had all the software already on it and the driver and everything. But I did look through the hard drive, like I said, to try and find any, you know, touch-centric applications. But aside from the Elo stuff, there was none of that. And there's no user data either. All that's been wiped, which, you know, props to the previous owner. They wiped their personal data off of here if there was any. But, you know, it is interesting because, like I said, even though this is most likely a one-of-a-kind computer, it was probably sold by Elo, or at least given to one of their employees and then given by the employee or sold to somebody else. I mean, who knows? Maybe this was just been owned by one person this entire time and, you know, they worked at Elo, this was given to them as a gift, or they bought it and then they went to work for this company in Tennessee and then they went to move up to Canada. I mean, who knows? We're probably not going to know exactly what this thing was used for unless the original owner or one of the previous owners finds this video and comments, which would be really freaking cool. But, you know, the chances of that happening are probably pretty slim. But I will say it's worth noting that these tray loading iMacs were not the only ones that got Elo's touchscreen treatment. When Apple introduced the updated slot-loading iMac G3s in late 1999, Elo began selling touchscreen versions of them soon after. And I was incredibly surprised to see that fellow YouTuber Action Retro was able to find one of these slot-loading touchscreen Elo iMacs and is working on a video of them. So definitely go check out his channel if you want to see the slot-loading variant of this thing in action. That's going to wrap it up for me. This is a video I have been working on for a while, and I'm just incredibly excited to finally get it done and just, you know, share this with the world because this is, like I said, probably the coolest Apple machine that I've got in my collection. So, yeah, if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more like it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, get subscribed, all that good stuff. And if you really enjoyed this video, and if you want to get early access to my future episodes, I do have a Patreon down below that you can check out. But either way, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.